Internet memes are about as old as the internet itself, with some of the earliest examples probably forming some of your earliest memories of being online. There's something inherently connective about either recognizing an image that someone sends you or sharing an image with someone for the first time. It's an experience that touches on a deeply human aspect of connection, community, and other words that imply just how much we like to be in on the joke. It's actually this very phenomenon that Richard Dawkins, the step-uncle of modern atheism, was studying when he first coined the term meme to refer to an idea, behavior, or style that spreads by means of imitation from person to person within a culture and often carries symbolic meaning representing a particular phenomenon or theme. I say all this because any conversation about Polandball, or Countryballs as you may have heard it called, will always involve some level of discussion about whether or not Polandball is a meme. I'm not here to tell you that it isn't, because in just about every conceivable way, Polandball absolutely fits the description of a cultural item that is spread through the internet and social media platforms, often taking the form of images, videos, GIFs, and other various media. What I am here to tell you is that Polandball is not just an internet meme, but an entire medium of communication and artistic expression unto itself. Before I get into that, don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already, or if you enjoy our videos and shorts and want to see more of them in the future. Now, back to the video. To explain what I mean by calling Polandball a medium, I want to talk about some other popular internet memes, specifically rage comics and advice animals. Both of these meme genres originated on the internet and grew in popularity around the same time as Polandball comics, approximately between 2009 and 2011, so they all share common mimetic DNA. Rage comics began as a simple comic strip created by an anonymous user on 4chan, revolving around everyday experiences that cause rage that is disproportionate to the experience. Very quickly, the images used to create the original Rage comics became stock characters in their own right, as people recognized the potential of Rage comics to satirize the minutiae of everyday life, and this cast of characters very quickly grew to include a large number of stock faces. Each of these faces represents a different but relatable experience in our day-to-day lives. The why you know guy makes us laugh because he expresses a common feeling of being absolutely baffled by human behavior, while the forever alone face represents all the times we felt lonely, and so on and so forth. Advice animals are a little bit different, belonging to a category of meme known as an image macro, generally involving text overlaid onto an image, but like Rage comics, advice animals rely heavily on stock characters and the tropes associated with them. The name is derived from the first few instances of the meme where the actual animals were used, but the cast of stock characters quickly expanded to involve humans as well. The humor of the advice animals format comes mostly from the stock characters setting expectations for how to interpret the overlaid text. For example, the infamous overly attached girlfriend is a stock character image telling the audience that the overlay text satirizes the behavior of clingy, obsessive, or generally crazy girlfriends. The actual advice mallard presents genuinely helpful advice without even the slightest hint of irony or sarcasm. Scumbag Steve is a stock character telling the audience that the text we're reading should be understood as the type of thing a scumbag would say, and so on and so forth. Both of these memes are what I like to call a medium, or plural media. The term media in art typically refers to the basic tools and units you use to create your art piece, like pen and paper, or clay, or music, etc. While in internet memes, I use the word medium to refer to a distinct genre of mimetic communication on the internet. The Rage comics medium deals specifically with everyday annoyances, primarily employing a defined cast of stock characters in a comic-based format, and the advice animals medium is an image macro genre employing stock characters to help the audience interpret the overlay text in humorous ways. So what does any of that have to do with Polandball? Well, I would also describe Polandball as a medium that deals with geopolitical and cultural satire through the use of comic strips with original artwork. But if you've been following Countryballs, or Polandball as we like to call it on this channel, for any length of time, what you'll notice is that Polandball comics are inherently different from most meme formats out there, especially when compared to Rage comics or advice animals. The two biggest differences in my mind are that Polandball comics do not revolve around stock characters the same way that Rage comics or advice animals do, and that Polandball comics are original content drawn from scratch by individual artists. It's because of these differences that, at the end of the day, I think Polandball/Countryballs is much bigger than a simple meme. It might be more accurate to refer to Polandball as a fandom. The first difference I want to focus on involves the lack of stock characters in a Polandball comic. When I say that Polandball comics don't have stock characters, I don't mean that there are never repeated characters, tropes, punchlines, catchphrases. One of the oldest Polandball comics is also the origin of one of the most iconic Polandball punchlines in the history of the medium: Poland cannot into space. What I mean by a lack of stock characters is that, unlike in Rage comics or advice animals, you cannot reliably interpret a country's dialogue in a Polandball comic based simply on your understanding of a country's appearances in previous comics. For example, just because Poland is featured in the comic doesn't mean the punchline will have remotely anything to do with space. And the reason for this is that Polandball comics are not about stock characters, they are about countries. A comic about Poland, therefore, is not about a cartoon character called Poland, but rather a comic about the real-life country Poland, or the Polish people on some level. Granted, there are stereotypes out there about Poland and the Polish people, as there are about any country you can think of, but if you're honest with yourselves, there is a finite number of jokes you can make with the same punchline before it becomes stale. The first time Poland cannot into space was the punchline of the comic was a truly iconic moment, but by the 50th time it's kind of lost its steam. Back to my point, Poland is not a stock cartoon character. Poland is a country rich with history and stereotypes, and any of these characteristics is fair game to make a comic about. There are plenty of comics featuring Poland as a bumbling plumber based off the stereotypes of Polish immigrants to other European countries, but there are plenty of other comics out there featuring Poland in a variety of different ways. In fact, the very first Polandball comics were not about geopolitics at all. Instead, they were drawn as part of a cyberbullying campaign against a Polish user named Wojak. Yes, the exact same Wojak from which an entirely different medium of memes comes from. The story goes that back in approximately 2009, Wojak was something of an insufferable presence on Crouch-Chan's int board, and the first Polandball comic was made by a British user named Falco to make fun of him. This was also probably the closest explanation we can find for why these were originally called Polandball comics instead of Countryballs. These early comics aren't as universally funny when divorced from their original context, but the anonymous users on Crouch-Chan saw their potential for being much more than simple doodles to make fun of one person. These drawings could be used to make fun of everyone. Very quickly after the original Falco comics, the earliest traditional Polandball comics expanded their cast of countries and became a smash hit, making their way to various parts of the internet, other image boards like 4chan, Imgur, Damn LOL, and even onto social media sites like Facebook and Reddit. Given this YouTube channel's close association with r/Polandball on Reddit, I could talk extensively about the medium's history as it relates to its largest subreddit, and in all honesty, the question, what is Polandball, has a lot to do with the way the medium has evolved and grown under the supervision of r/Polandball. But for this video, I'll limit my focus to one component of r/Polandball's influence on the medium, which brings me to my second big difference between Polandball comics and regular memes. Polandball comics are the original works of art created by individuals, which means that the overwhelming majority of Polandball comics you'll see on the internet were not generated by a template, nor do they employ images downloaded from the internet. Instead, each Polandball comic is drawn by hand, from scratch, by individual comic artists. I could have lumped this in with my first point about stock characters, because the stock characters for Advice Animals and Rage comics are reused image assets that can easily be loaded into a generator or comic builder, and easily arranged by the user creating the meme. But when talking about Polandball, the lack of stock characters and the emphasis on OC drawn by individuals are two distinct differences that have two very huge impacts on how the meme has developed over the years, and how we read Polandball comics. First of all, the lack of stock characters and archetypes means that the plot and punchline for each comic can be wildly different from artist to artist. Two individuals may portray Poland from two completely different perspectives, or with a wildly different personality from comic to comic with no fear of messing up the continuity. In a Rage comic, you wouldn't use the classic Rage face for a comic about being forever alone, for example, but in a Polandball comic, Poland can be anything from the plucky underdog protagonist, the bloodthirsty former abuse victim, the screwball comic relief who can't get anything right. Really, Poland can be portrayed however you want to portray Poland in your comic. Secondly, the emphasis on original content drawn by individuals means that individual artists are distinguishable from one another, meaning that no two comics are ever going to look quite the same. With an image macro generator involving stock characters and art assets, Advice Animals, Rage comics, and most image macros will generally look the same, even when they are made by different individuals. What separates Polandball comics from these memes is that each comic is much more dependent on the individual's output. Without stock characters, artists are not bound to a defined set of tropes to make their jokes, and with an emphasis on original artwork, artists tend to develop their own unique style that can be recognized across the internet. What's really interesting is that even with an emphasis on original artwork, there are tens of thousands of Polandball comics out there, and that's ultimately because anybody with a working copy of MS Paint can draw a decent Polandball comic. You may have seen impressive works of art out on the broader internet using Countryballs as subjects, but that's not the artistic standard. The artistic bar for a Polandball comic is so low that literally anybody can make one. In fact, to this day, the moderators of r/Polandball insist that in order to gain submission rights to the subreddit, every artist must draw their own comics by hand from scratch, ideally in MS Paint with a mouse, but any drawing program is acceptable so long as the end result could conceivably be replicated in MS Paint. As one of the moderators of r/Polandball, I could say a lot about this policy and why we make such a stink about this, and that might be a great video for the future. But as a member of the wider Polandball/Countryball community, I want to focus on what I believe the impact of this policy is on Polandball as a medium, given that the subreddit has long been recognized as one of the best places for Polandball comics. Since the subreddit heavily emphasizes original content, and since it is the largest host of that original content, much of what is posted to the subreddit is seen by people all over the internet who enjoy Polandball/Countryball comics. r/Polandball artists have been cross-posted to other subreddits, posted onto other social media sites like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, you name it, Polandball comics are probably posted to it. The subreddit standards that have been set over the years have spread to various other platforms, simply because r/Polandball's artists' comics are the ones going viral. That's not to say that r/Polandball standard is the gold standard by which all Countryball content must be judged. In fact, many other Countryball content creators have gained popularity totally independent of the subreddit, and do not strictly adhere to the subreddit's rules. But because most of the Countryballs content you see on the internet are based on comics that were originally posted by their authors onto the subreddit, it's really hard to ignore the influence r/Polandball has had on the entire medium. The emphasis on original comics drawn from scratch by individuals is truly what has elevated Polandball beyond just a simple meme format, which leads me to my big claim for the video. Polandball isn't just a meme anymore. If you ask me to give you a definition of what I think Polandball is, this video is basically my attempt to answer that question. Polandball is, in my understanding, a genre of satirical comic strips involving countries depicted as spheres, but it is also an artistic medium through which people can express themselves through storytelling, jokes, or even just artwork. There are mimetic elements to making a Polandball comic, shared understanding of cultural or national stereotypes, history, familiarity with geography, etc. But the heart and soul of Polandball is much bigger than most memes out there. Rage comics peaked in popularity between 2008 and 2012, and now most people think about them and cringe a little bit. Advice Animals peaked between 2011 and 2014, and while they changed the face of the image macro as we know it, nowadays Advice Animals are a fad that has since petered out. In comparison, Polandball, or Countryballs, is a medium with nearly limitless potential, and original Polandball comics have been steadily churned out for the better part of a decade and a half, with no real signs of slowing down. There is even an entire subreddit dedicated specifically to works of art, employing Countryballs as central figures. Beyond the standard Countryballs comics and works of art, there are communities dedicated to comics employing the ball suffix to portray many different things, including corporations, biological components, planets, stars, and other celestial bodies, LGBTQIA+ subdivisions, just to name a few, while some have shed the ball suffix entirely, creating country humans, which I personally think are a little bit cursed, but to each their own, right? So now that we've talked a little bit about what makes Polandball different from other memes out there, I want to talk a little bit more about the comics themselves. I mentioned before that Polandball began with comics posted to Crouchan to make fun of Wojak, but I haven't gone into the specifics of why they made fun of Wojak. Admittedly, the Origins of Polandball involve a touch of racism. If you're from the United States like I am, that might sound like a massive red flag, but one thing that's important for us Americans to understand is that European racism is a little bit different from what we're used to when we think of the word. Making fun of Germans for how much they like to work, or making fun of the French for being smelly, is technically about as racist as making fun of people for having a different color of skin than you do. Similarly, Falco, a British user, making fun of Wojak for being Polish and typing in broken English is actually quite racist. So when answering the question, what is Polandball, it is extremely important to acknowledge these roots because, first and foremost, these comics were originally created in 2009 to make fun of Wojak. Unlike in most cases of cyberbullying where the victim doesn't really deserve the hate they're receiving and the internet mercilessly tears them a new one, Wojak was truly the perfect target. Not only was he a Polish person writing in broken English on an international image board, the of into ing style of speaking is pretty much exactly how Wojak wrote, but he was also a creep and he kind of deserved it. Many of the posts attributed to Wojak involved alleged stalking and obsessing over women, and his overall online presence was generally unlikable. After the first few comics making fun of Wojak, other users on Crouchan quickly adopted the Polandball format to make fun of countries represented by the Countryballs that were originally used to depict individual users on Crouchan, though some of the mildly racist elements remained. The dialogue for non-Anglo countries was written in broken English, also referred to as English, while Anglo countries spoke in perfect conversational English. This is a convention that to this day is an integral part of modern Polandball comics and is a huge part of the Countryballs fandom culture. The phrases can into and is of, and the use of the plural present participle for most verbs, ings, are all prominent components of written communication in any community revolving around Polandball comics. Another important holdover from the Wojak era of comics is the name of the genre. I'd have to search really high and really low for the first instance of the word Polandball on Crouchan, and hopefully one of you can find that for me because that's the type of internet archaeology that really gets me going. But what is almost certainly true is that by the time 767 created r/Polandball in May of 2011, these comics were popularly referred to by that name as a direct result of their originally being made to make fun of Wojak. As the comics have grown from being meta comics about Crouchan users on the int board and have become more about countries, history, geopolitics, and stereotypes, the name Polandball has also become less and less relevant. It's a name that we use for this YouTube channel specifically due to our very close ties with r/Polandball on Reddit, and it's a name that to us represents and encompasses the whole of the history of the medium. Though we also recognize that the term Countryballs is more inclusive and representative of what the medium has become in the 15 years since the very first Polandball comic was created, to To us, the name Polandball is not just about what countries are featured or made fun of in the comics, but represents the unique style of humor, the dialogue conventions, the hand-drawn original content, the history of the entire medium, and all of the people who have come and gone over the years who made comics, helped build the subreddit, and ultimately helped make the entire genre/medium/fandom what it is today. Which reminds me, back in those early days, there really were no identifiable comic artists because the posts on Chan-style image boards were largely anonymous. But all of this would change with the simultaneous rise of the Facebook and Reddit Polandball communities. I'm trying my hardest to avoid talking too much about the history of r/Polandball because for this video, I really want to focus on the medium itself. But what I will say for now is that from 2012 to about 2017 or so, Facebook and Reddit had the largest concentration of Polandball fans on the entire internet, though it was plain and clear that most of the best original comics originated on r/Polandball. And many of the common tropes and noteworthy artists we know today were developed on the Reddit Polandball community. More on this in another video. The result of Polandball having dedicated communities and distinct artists is that the comics themselves evolved and changed. With every new artist who discovered the medium, either through Facebook or the subreddit, new storytelling techniques and perspectives were also brought with them. Polandball comics stopped being only funny, but they also started exploring other moods and vibes like horror, heartwarming, and depressing. Some artists even moved away from one-off jokes and started writing serialized stories told through Polandball comics. A cross-section of comics published between 2012 and 2017 shows the medium exploring all sorts of different kinds of stories and genres. Funny stories, sad stories, heartwarming stories, soap opera-style serialized dramas, horror stories, and the list goes on. At the end of the day, though, Polandball comics have always been their best when they satirize the absurdity of modern geopolitical relations and poke fun at stereotypes. A quick scroll through the top comics of all time on r/Polandball is a great way to become familiar with the style of humor most associated with Polandball comics, and what you'll see is that this humor is primarily satirical in nature. For those of you who need a refresher, satire is best defined as the use of humor to criticize, ridicule, or expose a subject for its vices. Satire is a bit more nuanced than simply making fun of something, though. It doesn't take a whole lot of effort to call something stupid or directly criticize someone. What makes it satire is the act of indirectly portraying something as stupid, either by over-exaggerating the subject or simply putting the subject on display as is, letting the stupidity of it speak for itself. If you scroll through some of the best Polandball comics in the history of the medium, you'll see a healthy dose of satire involved in the depiction of countries or people from those countries, focusing specifically on what makes the subject look stupid and either exaggerating it to the point of parody or simply putting it on display to be criticized. It's important to recognize this satirical element inherent to Polandball as a medium because, in the wrong hands, comics like these could very easily cross the line into actual unvarnished racism, and this is something that can be seen in some comics created outside of the tight confines of r/Polandball or other tightly moderated communities. One thing I can attest to as a moderator of r/Polandball is that we work very hard to ensure that the comics and, as much as humanly possible, the comments that are posted to the subreddit are free of actual racism. That line is very hard to walk, and admittedly, it can be very hard to tell the difference between brutal, deserved satire of a nation and genuine racism directed at its people. But I think that even trying to draw that line in the first place is what prevented r/Polandball from becoming a cesspool of racism and intolerant ideology that spread to other parts of the internet. Instead, what we have today is an internet-wide artistic medium that is inclusive, relevant, and fun. Polandball is inclusive because anybody from anywhere in the world can make a Polandball comic and contribute to the conversation. Even when the satire is brutal, as long as everybody involved recognizes the satire involved, anybody can create a Polandball comic and potentially steer the conversation in a different direction. Polandball will also always be relevant as long as countries exist and geopolitical relationships continue to be absurd. I am genuinely happy when I think about how the moment World War III actually begins, there will probably be a Zemo Nitrome or an Aaron C14 comic about it on the front page of Reddit, and I might even have to start a continuation for my serials. At the end of the day, though, Polandball is supposed to be fun. The entire medium is comprised of silly internet comics that are not meant to be taken seriously, even if this video essay is the result of how seriously I take the medium. The comics themselves are the equivalent to finding yourself laughing at a joke your friends told you, or watching one of your favorite TV shows or movies to pass the time, or writing stories and creating works of art for no other reason than because it's fun. The moment Polandball stops being fun is the moment you should probably find another hobby to enjoy. But the good news is that Polandball has been around for almost a decade and a half, and it shows no signs of going anywhere anytime soon. So whenever you come back from your break, there's an audience waiting for you. So what is Polandball? Polandball is a lot of things to a lot of people. It's a meme comprised of silly comics making fun of countries. It's an artistic medium unto itself. It's a philosophical school of thought, examining how we characterize the other compared to the self. just kidding, that's a bunch of meaningless psychobabble. Ultimately, I don't have any big definitive answers to that question other than Polandball is what you make of it. Just don't be an asshole. Also, don't forget to sit up straight and eat your vegetables. That's about all I have for you today. I'll be back another time to talk at length specifically about the history of r/Polandball and the role we've played in this medium over the years, so don't forget to like and subscribe and click on the little notification thingy to make sure you catch the latest videos. We've got more stuff coming, so stay tuned. Bye, y'all.